This is the Germans from Russia Experience, Episode 12. Welcome to the Germans from Russia Experience. I am the creator and your host, Alisa Long-Rodriguez, and I am here to inspire you and others to learn anything and everything about your own family heritage by providing information, experiences, and stories about a special group of people, the Germans from Russia. Hello, everyone. Today, I have kind of a mishmash of things for you. I've been working on a few big things, which I'll tell you about later. And so in the meantime, I just want to bring together some information about how you can, if you're interested in genealogy, as you probably are listening to me talking here, how you can get some more information and know what's going on out there. So the first thing are some other podcasts that I listen to. Research Like a Pro. I found this podcast about, a year or so ago, and they already have over 300 episodes. Diana and Nicole are a mother-daughter team, and Diana is an accredited genealogist, and Nicole, I think she's still working towards her accreditation. But they have so many years of experience, so many stories. They also have a website called familylocket.com. And on there they have lots of resources and things for people who are looking into genealogy. They also speak at genealogical conferences all over the nation. And I think they've even mentioned being in other countries, maybe, and speaking about how they solve problems and how they do research. And they share so much about exactly what they do to break through brick walls. And a brick wall, if you don't know, is, you have a question and you've asked this question of your family, you've looked into documents, you've done all these things for years and you just can't figure out the answer. And they talk about, how to do that. And it's fantastic information. They have episodes on land records. I never really thought that much about my family who did live in the United States for a few hundred years before I came along, because I do have a side of my family that has. They talk about, how to get land records, how to read land records. It's just incredible the stuff that they know. Probate records. I never thought about my family having probate records either, but it's very, very possible that they did, because everyone did at some point. Also, they talk about, like I said, they share all of their resources with you. And so they share a way to write a research plan, how to make the outline of what is the question that you want to answer, all the things that you know about it so far, and, a plan of where you're going to go to break through these brick walls or answer these questions that you have. Another podcast that I just found a few weeks ago is Flower in the River. And this podcast is created by Natalie Zett, and she has been a journalist and an author and a genealogist. She began this podcast after the publication of her book by the same name, Flower in the River. It is about the Eastland disaster, which, if you've heard of it, I will be very shocked, because I had never heard of it, and many, many people that Natalie has encountered in the last 25 years have not heard of it. Very few people have heard of it. It was a ship that sunk in the Chicago River, right in Chicago, in July of 1915. It was right at the dock, and it sank. She learned over 25 years ago that she had a great aunt that was on that ship and died at the age of 19. She didn't even know that this aunt existed before she learned about her. 25 years ago. There were 844 people that lost their lives that day, and many of them were young people and children. Some were entire families. They were embarking on a company picnic for the company Western Electric, which employed thousands of employees. And they were all invited to go on this picnic that would take place across the river. Anyway, if you're interested in that, go to Flower in the River, wherever you get your podcasts. The next podcast that I love is Stories That Live in Us. And this podcast is by Krista Cowan. She is a corporate genealogist for Ancestry. And she also privately is known as the Barefoot Genealogist. She has a website, and I believe it's by the same name, the Barefoot Genealogist. I haven't looked it up yet, but she started this podcast probably about a year ago, and it's just what it says, Stories That Live in Us. Her favorite thing about genealogy and her ancestry is the stories, collecting the stories. She talks to people about their stories. She shares her stories, and she also just really encourages people to, take those stories down, to tell those stories, to write them down, to ask your oldest relatives for stories. Even if it's a part of a story, it's still important and it's valid and it's part of your family heritage, your family history, your the narrative, your story of your family. So any and all bits and pieces of stories should be collected and written down in some form to pass on. Another podcast is called Twisted Roots, and this is by Dale Sheldon, who is a genealogist, and it's a true crime and genealogy mixed together. So this is cool for me because I really love true crime podcasts aside from what I do with genealogy and my profession. But mixing true crime and genealogy is really cool. So he talks about old, crime stories from the 1800s, even the 1700s. And then he actually does research through, I don't know if he uses ancestry, but there's all kinds of ways to get records out there. And he, goes through census records, and he goes through birth records, and he goes through newspaper stories, tons and tons of newspaper stories to put together the information for the story that connects to actual genealogy. And sometimes I think he's found like living descendants of people, and he's talked about that in his podcast. And so very fun podcast to listen to. I haven't listened to very many of them, but I plan to. Okay, another way to get into your family heritage, whether you're German from Russia or you're Italian or whatever. I'm hoping there's more people than just descendants of Germans from Russia who are listening to my podcast. But if you are of another heritage, there are tons of Facebook pages for cultural groups. Being that this is the Germans from Russia experience, I'll share with you the first few here are for Germans from Russia. The first one, Germans from Russia, food and culture. People share the foods they make. They share the recipes. They share dancing and music and all kinds of things like that. This one's called Germans from Russia Heritage Society. Volga German Research Community. Germans from Russia Heritage. There are probably more. Each of the historical societies of Germans from Russia also have websites. Some of them aren't necessarily always kept up, but the information is there. There's usually contact people there, and you can ask questions through those websites. And Facebook pages, which is what we're talking about. Other Facebook pages, there is one for the United States National Archives, the Library of Congress, Family Search Library. Newspapers.com has a Facebook page as well. Family Search, Ancestry has their own Facebook page. And Find a Grave. Those are more Facebook pages that I see in my feed that show interesting information that help me with my genealogy research and learn new things about the programs that they offer. For actual websites, I'm going to rattle off a lot of websites right now, but they will be in the show notes, so you don't have to pause and rewind and write them down. I will put them all in the show notes. North Dakota State University has a Germans from Russia research collection, and there is a lot of information online to where you wouldn't have to go to North Dakota to find this information. So that's a great resource. Again, I mentioned the historical societies of Germans from Russia. We have the American Historical Society of Germans from Russia, the national website. And within the national website, you can find links to all the different chapters around the nation. And sometimes those individual chapters can have things that the national doesn't have. Of course, I'm speaking for myself here in Fresno. Our Central California chapter, we actually have a building, a research library, and a museum. Very, very fortunate. We have many one-of-a-kind items. We have very, very old items. We have some unidentified items and family trees and many other things. You've heard me talk about that before. But many of these things are one-of-a-kind. So you would really have to reach out to us. There's an email address on there as well. To ask specific questions about what documents we might have. Again, these are not all connected to Germans from Russia, but they are websites that I have become aware of through genealogy research or that people have shared with me. And the next one is DNA Painter. And this might not be as necessary as it was a few years ago because if you do use, put your DNA up in a website that is going to process it for you and give you numbers and things. I noticed in Ancestry, and I'm certainly no expert, but I have noticed in Ancestry that they show a lot more details about your DNA, how much DNA you share with different people and comparing the DNAs with different people. So this one might not be totally necessary anymore if you are using Ancestry. Now, I can't speak for the other programs because I have not used them. Kukkus.com. If you are a Volga German descendant and you probably had family members who either, were in Kukkus at some time, if you've already traced your tree, and they have put all of the census records for the village of Kukkus up on this website. Check it out. norkarussia.info is for the Norka village. volgagermans.org. This is a large database of information on the origins, the history, the villages, the surnames, the culture for Volga Germans. Newspapers.com. Every time I go on here, I just find amazing, amazing things. They have over 1 billion pages of newspaper now archived digitally, so that you can access it from anywhere. And it's very amazing. Findagrave.com. I thought most people, especially those who do genealogy, know about Find a Grave, but I think I found someone last week or the week before talking about, my hobby and what I like to do and mentioned Find a Grave, and they said, "What's that?" Find a Grave is an amazing website as well. I think it probably could be way updated, but it's run by people who volunteer, I'm pretty sure, for the most part. In fact, they invite you to contribute. And if you understand the information or the way that Wikipedia works, where anybody can write things on there, they might not always be totally true or researched or documented. And that can happen on Find a Grave as well. But at least it is a resource that you can maybe get another clue, or if you see a photo of someone's headstone, it has their name, the year they died, the year they were born on it. even though that also might not be true information, you can get an idea that this might be the person that you're looking for, where they're buried, in the whole United States. Amazed at what you find on there. And again, it is interactive. You can add photos. You can add locations of graves. If you find a grave in a cemetery, you can actually use the directional with your iPhone or your smartphone. It knows exactly where you are on this earth, and it can log it longitude and latitude wise. Anyway, I haven't used all those things, but I've been told they're pretty amazing. Okay, another Volga German website, schillinggr.org, for those that are searching for information from the Schilling village. We have familysearch.org. This is a website where you can create a free family tree and have access to many documents for free. So if you're just starting out and you want to see if this is something you like to do, if you're just interested in seeing what kind of documents are out there, Family Search is a good place to start. I think on Family Search, when you make a tree, other people can manipulate it. So that might not be interesting to you, meaning that, if you put something in there, you don't want someone to change it. So that might be a reason not to use Family Search for that. But again, if you're just getting started and you want to see if this is something you're interested in, that's a good place to start. This website, I would have to spell it out for you. Comes from a blog that a man started probably in the early 2000s, I think. And it is about a specific refugee camp. It was in Frankfurt on the Oder River. And this website, like I said, has a blog where this person who's doing the blog, he writes about different documents that he's accessed and he's found. If you have photos to share, which I have one of my grandmother there at the camp that I have shared with him. And he has lists of the people as they came into the camp. So there's a lot of interesting things there. My friend Erin, who I did our grandma's story podcast with, she showed me on there where my great grandmother's name was entering the camp. And we kind of mentioned that in that episode too. VolgaRecords.com. This website contains translated parish records of births, deaths, and more. They say they add more things weekly. It just depends on who's working on it and who has things to post up. So every week somebody puts something up there new. So you got to keep looking back if they don't have what you're looking for. VolgaGerman.net. This is the Hayes, Kansas chapter. VolgaGermanInstitute.org. This is Brent Mai's website, and it gets updated pretty regularly. There's a person on there that blogs, and she posts every, at least once a year, but it's not too old. And of course, this information is, as old as it is. So what is there to update? It's history. Yeah. All right. There's a website that, again, I would have to spell it out for you, and I will include it in the notes, but it's a Russian war database. And again, Erin is the one who showed this to me. We shared it on that podcast as well. You can see it all in English, though. I don't know if you've ever run into some website that you may have been looking into that was in another language. And with Google, I'm not sure if it's a Google thing, but with Google, you can go up and choose the language, and it will translate the whole thing for you right there before your eyes. So, of course, we looked at this in English, but it's not accessible at this time. So if you had family members, men in your life, in your ancestry, that were in Russian wars in the First World War, you might be finding them on there. Let's see, what's next? CastleGarden.org. America's First Immigration Center. Okay, they have a free online database of New York passenger lists from 1830 through 1913. Okay, most of you have heard of Ellis Island, And before Ellis Island, there was Castle Garden. And so you might not be looking for Castle Garden. You might be only looking in Ellis Island, and you might not find your people. So check that one out. Let's see. statueofliberty.org/Ellis Island is, of course, how you get to Ellis Island. Or if you just Google it, it's going to tell you how to get there. There is a Germanic Genealogy Society, where you could get records if you know or if you've researched back far enough to find your people in Germany. We also have, these have complicated URLs, so I will just tell you what they are. There's a website that's in German, and the society that runs it continues to do a ton of work for the Germans of all areas of Russia. So that is an interesting one. There is a website that is a guide to interpreting passenger lists and annotations. Interesting. There is a Germans from Russia Digital Genealogical Library Index. I have that website. There is a website here that has settlement locations and maps. Lots of maps. So if you like maps, that's going to be a place for you to look at. Next, we have free genealogical resources, usgenweb.com. Of course, ancestry.com. It's kind of my one-stop shop a lot of the times. I'm kind of simple that way. grandmaonline.org. This is a Mennonite database. So if you are from Mennonites, Black Sea area people mainly, that might be a place where you're going to find information. There is a Catholic records website called matriculaonline.edu. There is another map website called Myers Gazetter. There is a website for Danish archive. And the reason that could be important is because there was a large group, several thousands of Germans that when they left Germany the first time before 1763, they went up to Denmark. And they spent a few years there trying to make their new life. For most of them, they continued on to the Volga. And there's many, many records about that. In fact, this is one of the things I'm researching right now is the migration of the Germans that went to Denmark first and then went on to the Volga. So I have a book. It's very, very thick. And I'm reading through that now. And I also have a contact person that I'm working with who hopefully will join me on a podcast because she knows much, much more about this subject than I can ever read, even if I complete the book. So we will look forward to that. Okay, I mentioned the Library of Congress, and their online records can be found at chroniclingamerica.loc.gov. Another website, Roots to Roots Foundation, Routes to Roots. I haven't looked on there, so I'm not exactly sure what's there. But again, you never know what you're going to find if you don't go looking for it. Okay, so what else can you do to promote and learn about your family heritage and history? You can get involved with things that are going on in your community that have to do with Germans from Russia. Now, I realize that many of you might not have anything, but you can access things through the internet, as I mentioned, with the podcasts, with the Facebook groups, interacting with other people of our culture. On those Facebook pages and websites, you will learn about things that are going on around the country. Some are recorded or there's live feeds if you can't travel. But if you can travel, you may want to consider going to the American Historical Society of Germans from Russia National Convention this July. It starts on the 30th. It's called Preserving Our Heritage, and it will be in Lincoln, Nebraska, which again is where the national organization is. They have a building, at least one building, as far as I know. I haven't been there yet. I am going this year. They have a library and a museum as well, and lots of archived documents. In California, we have the Central California Chapter, which is in Fresno. Now, we are in the middle of the state, so if you're anywhere in California, we would hope that you could come and visit us. You would not be sorry. We had a tour in October around Fresno, a bus tour from our building, and we had some people come up from San Diego. They flew in the airplane to come up to San Diego to participate in that. And this is the kind of thing I'm talking about, to get involved. If you can't go there, the next best thing is, getting involved online, I think. At the Fresno Historical Society, we have lots of events. You can learn about them on our Facebook page, on our website, and also if you become a member, which is just $20 a year. That's such a small donation for what you get out of being a member. We send you a monthly newsletter, and in there, of course, there's information about our events. There are stories like the stories I tell you here. There are recipes. There are word puzzles. It's a variety of things, and I can't tell you how we get compliments every month that people, enjoy our newsletter. It helps them to keep, their heritage at the front of their mind. They try those recipes, and it just makes a big difference for them. You could also make a recipe. So many people come to the cooking classes at the Historical Society, and also I see comments online on these Facebook groups. Oh, my grandmother used to make that, but I've never made it. I haven't had it since 19, whatever it was before grandma died. And I just really encourage you to get a recipe from your heritage culture and make it. If you're intimidated about making it, there are tons of videos on YouTube of people all over the world making these recipes. Now, I guarantee you, as you look at one of those demonstrations, you're going to say, oh, well, my grandmother didn't do it that way. She did it this way. And hopefully that would encourage you to make that little change and to go ahead and prepare a recipe. You will be happy that you did. When I do the cooking classes at the Historical Society, almost every time I hear that from people. My grandma did it this way or this way. And that's what we love to share, all the different modifications and variations and even the different names of those dishes. It's just a lot of fun to get together with people and do that. So hopefully you can have that same experience if you watch videos. And if you do make a recipe, please tell me about your experience. You can go to my Facebook page or you can write an email. And the last thing is to talk to your oldest relatives. You won't be sorry that you did. You really won't. You're going to learn something. You're going to make a connection to someone else in your family. You are going to just have more, as I said, a piece of your family narrative. That's so important for us to understand our own selves when we understand where we came from. I think another thing I'll include in my show notes or a web link or something. I think that my notes are getting very long this time, but I just have so much that I want to share with people. And I really hope that you will comment about that, because I don't get a lot of feedback. I mean, I do from my personal friends, but I don't get a lot of feedback from strangers or, other people who I don't talk to about any little bit of something that they're getting out of this podcast, anything positive. Or if you don't like it and you bailed, I'd like to know that too, I guess. But I'm really not doing this for other people. I'm doing this for myself because I want to, put these things out there and remember. But I was going back to something. Yes, something else I'll add in my show notes. Several years back, maybe almost 20 years ago, Emory University put out a list of 20 questions that if you are able to answer these questions about yourself and your family, that you hold within you a strong family narrative. And again, that is so important because the more we know about where we came from, the more we know about ourselves. So the questions ask something like, do you know how your parents met? Do you know the story of your own birth? Do you know where your parents went to school? Do you know where your grandparents grew up? Things like that. And I went through the 20 questions this morning, right before I started work, and I immediately thought, oh, I'm going to be able to answer all these questions. But I got to a few of them and I thought, oh, wait, I need to ask my mother more about this because, she's my last parent living, my oldest relative at this point that knows about my immediate family. And so I need to ask her a few questions so that I can answer these 20 because I really pride myself on knowing a lot of details about my family, and I need to know these things that I didn't know this morning when I went to write my story. So I have that. Yes, knowing things about my family is so important that even when my children were young, I would show them people of family that didn't live near us and, make sure they knew who it was. And I would talk about other members of the family. And I tell my kids, things I learned about their grandfather or things about me when I was a kid, or I do that a lot. And so I hope that I'm supporting their, their knowledge of what their family members have been through and what their story is. Stories are so important. All right. As I said at the beginning, I am working on a couple of different projects, pretty big ones right now. And that's why I don't have a specific titled episode for you this time. One of the things I'm working on is researching the Reverends Carl Legler and Jacob Legler, which were very important here in Fresno at our cross church. And another pastor that was important here in Fresno was Paul Crumbine. And by doing his family ancestry tree, that's where I've started with trees, I found that he was born in Germany. He wasn't a Volga German. And here he was a very important pastor at this Volga German church here in Fresno. So he also took his family to North Dakota first. Then they went to Washington before they came to Fresno. So very interesting things to find in records about people and these pastors in particular. So I'll be sharing all that with you in an upcoming episode. The other big research I'm working on, I already mentioned it earlier as well, is the Denmark connection and how many Germans went through Denmark before going to the Volga. So that's, again, another big project, an interesting project. Probably most of us now in this generation, being the 6th or 7th generation since that time in the early 1700s, if you come from Volga Germans or Germans from Russia, you probably had at least one set of your 6th or 7th time great grandparents go to Denmark during that time. Really, you probably did. I did. I found my 6 great grandparents, and I'll be telling you about them at another time. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to the Germans from Russia experience. I hope that something you heard today will inspire you to learn anything and everything you can about your own ancestors. If you like what you heard, please leave a review, like and share this podcast. You can comment directly by emailing me at thegermansfromrussiaexp@gmail.com. Be my first email. I have not had an email from the podcast yet. I'd love to hear from you and about that recipe you're going to make. Also, like my Facebook page, the Germans from Russia Experience Podcast. Please see all the show notes. It's going to be pages and pages and website suggestions to begin or continue your discovery of your Germans from Russia roots and about this episode. My podcast artwork is by Matt Wall. I received technical assistance from my friend Annie Anderson.